Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Another episode of the Memories of Plymouth. And I really should say Plymouth, New Hampshire, because there are over I think there's 31, 32, but you can call in and you can tell us if we're wrong. Plymouths in the United States, believe it or not. So we're continuing with our program that we have held for maybe 9 years.
Wow.
And our purpose from the very beginning is to truly think of the memories. Let's go back in time a little bit today. Think of the memories, the stories that we have about Plymouth and the surrounding areas. And we have two guests with us today, and I'd like to introduce them to you. On my near left is, who are you, lady? I've never seen you before. Go ahead.
I'm Judy Floyd. We've lived, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Paul Floyd.
And where did you two grow up?
In Laconia, New Hampshire.
I grew up in Laconia, New Hampshire, but I come from Lumberton, North Carolina.
How many people have heard of Lumberton, North Carolina?
It's on the way
If you go to Florida, you go through it.
All right then. All right, so please state your full name, and with you, Judy, if you would do your maiden name.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thanks.
My name is Judy Olson Floyd. I was born and grew up in Laconia, New Hampshire, and I've lived in Plymouth for 54 years.
I'm Paul M. Marion Floyd, and I've lived in Plymouth for 54 years, too.
I must know you.
So what date did you move into Plymouth?
1950, well, we've been
71.
here 54 years. What was it?
1971.
1971.
Ooh, let's take just a minute. Think about 1971. What was Plymouth like then?
Well, we were really excited when we got here. At first, I was hesitant. I'm very attached to my family, and 30 miles seemed so far away. I'd gone to school here, but still, I liked being in Guilford near my parents. And when we got here, we just found everything that was happening nationwide to be contradicted. At the time, we didn't care what political party the different people belonged to, but we were more apt to be concerned about what church you might go to. It was really funny back then. But when we got here in Plymouth, everybody was just accepted. It was we started with a welcoming coffee at the Congregational Church in the Common, and it was so well attended. We made lifelong friends that day, and in fact, we're still friendly with them. And also a good friend of ours were the Farringtons, Maureen and Ed Farrington. They moved to our country from Ireland, and their kids were all outstanding students in our school. And somehow they just took us in and asked us to the Catholic Church for, they had Saturday night suppers. They had a wonderful priest there also. And it was just a good time. We went skiing with them and hiked some of the 4,000 footers. So we were thrilled that we just felt at home.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. People are so important to our community, and you're unusual. Maybe I'm wrong, let me know. But you come into town and you meet someone right off the bat that's going to end up being friends.
Yeah.
Well, we met here, and we married.
Oh, so you met through school?
Through Dr. Tatara.
We did.
Here we go, Plymouth State College then?
Plymouth State College.
Wow, Dr.
Go
Tatara's
ahead.
class.
Well, it was so interesting because we got our degrees from Plymouth State, my master's in BS. And Paul, he did start off in France first, though. But during our junior year, we took an English course together. And even though we knew each other at Laconia High, we would say hello, but that was it. And in this class, I don't think, Louise, you've ever had one like this. All the boys sat on one side, and it was in the 60s? Yep.
Yeah.
And all the girls sat on the other side. And Dr. Tatara put up with that for a while, and then he said to us, next time if this happens, I will assign seats. And so the next day, the next course time came, and the boys sat on one side and the girls sat on the other. So he assigned Paul and I seats next to each other. So we became friends. We started commuting back and forth to Laconia. And we've been married for 60 years now.
That's a congratulations, you know.
Yeah.
It really
But
is.
we just had this cute little story about Dr. Tara. We met him after he retired, and he said, you know, they asked me at my retirement if what was my most significant contribution to Plymouth. And he said, well, I got Judy and Paul Floyd together. And he was kidding. But we got a big kick out of it.
Oh, that's great. It's nice to go back and think of the teachers that we have had,
Yeah.
and amazingly how much they affected us, and we may not have known it at the end, but as our college years, but as time goes by, you say, there's somebody that I'd love to say, I did say thank you to, just about 5 years ago before
Oh.
she passed away.
Who was that?
Miss Miller, Ruth Miller,
Oh,
Oh,
she's
yes.
lovely, yeah.
third grade teacher. They're a great teacher.
She was
And there's a
dedicated.
teacher that will say something to you, do something for you, and years later you remember how important that was.
Yeah.
But speaking of teachers, think back in Laconia or here, was there a teacher that was important to you? And if you are comfortable sharing the name, please do, but why?
Well, I liked Dr. Barrett very much.
Oh, in Laconia, honey, maybe
Oh, in
she meant.
Laconia.
Well, I'll do that one too. This
Okay.
sounds fun.
Okay.
Either or. Either or.
Dr. Barrett was my favorite because what I did was right out of high school, I had French 1. And a family friend came over and I couldn't figure out if I was going to college or not. And she said, you know, my parents live in France. She was from France. And she said, my parents own a restaurant. And if you don't know what college you want to go to, why don't you go to the University of Grenoble in France? And I said, well, what do I do? And she said, nothing. The French don't have entrance exams. They just interview you. And you're a student. And and I wanted to major in French. And I thought that was perfect. With 1 year of high school French, I went, and he asked me one French word. And he asked me to conjugate the verb to put. And that's easy because French is like English. Je mets, tu mets, il met, nous mettons, vous mettez, il met. And that was an irregular verb, but you know, that was easy. He said, okay, you're in. But he says you are taking the cours intensif. You're not going to be in the auditorium with 500 students without being able to speak French. So you're going to be in a special class where no word of English is spoken the whole time you're here. And then at the end of the year, you'll take a test. And if you can pass 3 written tests and 3 oral exams, you'll get your premier degree. And that's equal to 1 college year. And so when I got to Plymouth, they said, well, that's a lot of credits you got in France. We'll give you 36 semester hours for your diploma in France, and you can major in French, but you don't have to take French, but I wanted to take it because I didn't want to get rusty, and Dr. Barrett had me in French and Spanish, and I loved it.
That's great.
We eventually bought our house.
Oh my gosh.
It was a coincidence.
Oh
but
my
isn't
God.
that
It was a coincidence, but
But I didn't know she taught both languages. And
yes, she did.
She did.
And I hadn't had any Spanish, but it's the same as French. It was easy.
I'm trying to think of Bob Barrett, one of her sons, still lives in Hawaii, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, he
We
was in my
tried to
class.
see him.
both?
We
do.
went to Hawaii for our 40th anniversary, and we called his house, and we couldn't get through. It just kept ringing and ringing. We got back to Plymouth, and we said, you know, we couldn't get in touch with Lady Barrett's son. And they said, while you were in Hawaii, she was being buried, her funeral. She died right before we left. We didn't know it.
Did you go to that one? We were very
So
sad.
they were in
I
New
don't think I
Hampshire
lived here.
Oh,
I think
at
I
the
lived
time.
away for 15
for the
years.
funeral, and we were in Hawaii.
Wow.
But we went there for our anniversary, so we still had a good time.
I think both our sons live in Hawaii. That must be hard for
Yeah.
Far away, far
I
away.
think
family.
we called 2 numbers.
Yeah.
Judy?
Um, well, I loved my first grade teacher, Miss Maxey, and I had Mrs. Lyman. I remember playing in the sandbox in kindergarten and with farm figures, and I was thrilled with myself. But with Miss Maxey, I noticed how much she cared about others. And at that time, we had a lot of pressure on reading groups. There were the top bluebirds and the bottom black jays. And so I can remember one time one of my friends fell out of she went down a reading grade after some testing, and Miss Maxey spent some extra time with her, and she went back up. And Miss Maxey was as happy as the little girl. She was thrilled that she was back in the reading group she had been in before. So that was a special memory.
That's neat. That's neat. Let's see. What have you been doing all your lives? What businesses have you been attached to, affiliated with?
Okay, I
Good
might
job.
start.
Good job.
I was really lucky because we came to Plymouth at such an exciting time. Isn't it a place where so much is happening? But at the time, Dr. Ken Hughes was starting a children's center at the college, and it was something really needed in the town. There wasn't enough babysitters around, and we were all so lucky to be there because the professors helped us. The early childhood professors met with the parents and with the teachers, and it was housed right at the college, which is so centrally located.
Can you remind us? I remember them in 2 locations. What was yours?
Oh, right. That's right. They did move behind the elementary school. We started out. It was at High
Down
Street.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
then
right,
it
on
moved.
High Street.
I wasn't there at the time when it moved, but
Okay.
it's been going for quite a while now
It
and
has.
very successfully.
And you have children. So did either of them, did your children attend this?
They were older. They were in the elementary school at the time.
Okay.
I remember I took a job, and our younger daughter said, "Well, what will happen if I'm sick?" She was very concerned when I went to work because I had been a at-home mother while they were younger. So
That was really the beginning, it seems like, that decade. A lot of the women were making decisions. Should I go to work? Can I go to work and still be the mother I want to be at home?
it was
Yeah, that was a while ago.
a brave step forward, but
I think you're
necessary.
right.
Yeah.
Beautifully done. Yeah, that was well done. Let's see. I want to go backwards just a step. What was your very first job? How old were you?
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
Yeah.
my first job was at Interlakes in Meredith. I taught for 3 years, French and a little Spanish. And then we moved to Connecticut for the money, and I taught for 2 years. And then Judy was allergic to the tobacco that they grew in the fields around. We were kind of near
Windsor,
Hartford,
yeah.
and we got the smoke and everything. And so after 2 years in Connecticut, and the money wasn't that much because it's so expensive to live there, we decided we'd move back. And so I put my name in in Concord, in the State House. I guess that's what they mostly did. Somebody said, you do that, and the principals go in and they look, and if they need a certain teacher, they'll see your name. Well, Mady Barrett was there, and she saw my name, and I got a call, and everywhere I went, she helped me get a job. And so I got a call, and she said, they're building a new school in Plymouth, and there's 1 year you'll have in the old school, and then you'll be in the new school. And she said, why don't you come back to Plymouth? That would be nice. And I said, well, gee, I don't know. We were there for college, and there are a lot of beer cans on everybody's lawn, and we didn't know if we wanted to move back there. So we bought a house in Guilford. And then I worked for, we kept the house, we owned it in Guilford for 3 years, and I got tired of commuting back and forth, and I was getting really fond of Plymouth again, the way it was in college. And I said to Judy, maybe we should move to Connecticut, to Plymouth. I won't have to commute every day, and
That's right.
we did that, and it was the best place we ever lived. We loved it, and we bought a house that
Had a nice backyard.
yeah, it had a nice backyard.
On Warren Street.
And
It was an old cape that was very nice.
an old cape. And then, but we always loved Dr. Barrett's house. When we were courting, we're living here, going to college, we used to go for walks, and we'd walk by Dr. Barrett's house up on where we live now. And we just loved that house so much. And I loved it because Dr. Barrett took us up there to sing Christmas carols and stuff. And we'd have little parties up there.
Oh, that's so
And
nice.
she's very friendly. And she was a good friend when we moved back to Plymouth. We hung around together a lot. And so she was a lifetime friend. But I don't know if I answered your question.
I liked it.
Well, it was funny. After 7 years at the Plymouth Children's Center, I just felt that I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. That was my calling. And so after school, after work one day, I went right over to Holderness Central School. I looked up the principal, and I said, it was Ken Cooper. He was one of my dearest principals. I said, I'm Judy Floyd, and I would like to apply for the kindergarten opening. And after I worked there a while, he said, you know, I really like the determination you came over here with. He said, you wanted that job, and it made me really want to hire you.
Wow.
Isn't that
Wow.
nice? But what was great about him is he was a lifelong learner. So he was a great example for the children and a great example for all of us.
He was a Dartmouth scholar.
Yeah, he was, and his dad wanted him to be a lawyer, but he found he was always arguing with his friends, and he said, Dad, I'm not going to do it. I want to teach. So he did, and I'm glad. But on Fridays, he'd build rockets for the 8th graders, and I could hear him talking a foreign language. You know, your chapeau, monsieur, take off your hat. At that time, that was kind of a rule that was popular. And so it was a great experience for me. And I do have 2 students. I mean, my parents owned a grocery store in a neighborhood. And not everyone back then had a car, but it was right before supermarkets became popular. And I learned from them how to care about people, because someone would come in and need a ride to the doctors, and my mom or dad would be sure they got there and they picked them up. So, I just thought that's how everybody treated people. And people would say, you're a very caring teacher, and I always said, thank you, Mom and Dad.
That's right.
But anyway, first one was Dominic Rotella. I mean, I had a relationship with every one of them. Don't you think that's so important? But Dominic was 5, and his dad was Joe Rotella, a doctor in Plymouth, and his mother was a brilliant at-home mom. And all of her friends said, Dominic's 5, Mary. He will have to go to a special school. He should not go to kindergarten. So Mary was very smart, and she said, no, he will go to kindergarten. She said, that's just what he needs. And so she knew that I really felt strongly that people learn from the curriculum, but the children learn from each other, and they learn their social skills, they solve problems, and at that age, they do need playtime. They do, to really play out what they see happening in life. And so she and I got along famously, and just 2 months ago or so on a Saturday night, Paul and I were home, and I got this call. It was Dominic. And he said, hello, Mrs. Floyd. He said, I just wanted to tell you, I've had many teachers over the years, and you are top of the heap. A great compliment.
And how many years between you had spoken to him and that call?
Well, when he graduated from high school, he moved to Lexington, Kentucky. His mom thought he'd have more musical chances there because he was a drum major, and he plays the French horn in the Richmond, Virginia Symphony. But so what was I saying? I lost my thought. But anyway, he moved away. What was your question, Louise? I forgot. Oh well, let me see.
How many
So anyway,
years
I
to
hadn't.
place?
Oh,
He
I
calls you
know.
up.
When he was graduating, she had told me before because I kept in touch with her. We became really good friends, and she said that Dominic wouldn't let her throw away any of his kindergarten papers.
Oh, Judy.
And so she said to him when he graduated from high school, she said, is there anyone from New Hampshire you'd like to invite to your graduation? And he said he'd like to invite me. So I heard at that time, and he had said he'd really like to come visit in New Hampshire. And said, our door is open, we told him, so if ever he does get back here, but he's very busy.
Oh, that's neat.
So, but the other one was Ben Connor, and at the time, Alpha Time series was the thing. They were cartoon, blown up letter people, and you would learn that the children would learn the name from the sound they made, their name, and so they were. Songs and dances and storybooks and whatever else we did along with it. And I noticed that Ben was making these booklets of letter people interacting with each other. He was. I have brought some of his drawings to show you, but so on a whim, I just took a booklet of his and I sent it to the Alpha Time Publishing Company, and they answered. They said they'd like to visit the classroom. They came in June. They visited with Ben and his family, and because of that, they gave us new Alpha Time people. They felt we were missing some important parts, and it was a great experience for the children. And I think also that Ben because they used his pictures, they made an arrangement with the family that he had a little scholarship fund for college.
Wow.
So I'm so glad I did
Wow.
that. And this is one of them. Here is an A page from Ben Connor's. It's very small to see, but he has an alligator with an apple in his wife and mouth, and this Jew
What does that do?
is catching it. And then he was very creative, and I'm so glad I took the time to do that. There was just one more.
I'll never forget that.
I
I'll
know.
never forget it. Yeah, that's
And
wonderful.
what was the card company you worked for a while?
A card company.
Didn't he do something for
Oh,
Hallmark?
yes, he
Yeah.
worked on Cartoon Network. He works out in California, and he's now a freelance artist, but his parents have told me that he's at top of his life, that there have been many layoffs in Hollywood, and he has survived. He lives with a group of other artists, but he's a great cartoon artist, and he just was an exceptionally nice person. Everybody we meet here is nice.
Well, I'm thinking
It's contagious.
the connection we have with our students, and I so often have said, I wonder where they are now. And I've made some comments. Again, I teach the upper level college students, but I'd said, I'd love to hear from you. 10 years from now, just let me know. I want to know if you're happy, if
I
you
know.
if you chose the right field. I am always saying to people and students at 18, how can we pick something that we will be passionate about for the rest of our lives?
That's right.
Is it something that you did with him and he never forgot it, and look where he is now?
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, I think that we all have that. We want to know that we had an effect on the students, and it's not just a job, an occupation.
Well, we give a lot of ourselves to them. And I did have tears in my eyes when he called that other night. And I said, well, you were always a standout in my mind, too. And he was. I do keep in touch with his mom every Christmas. So
That's
it
so
was
wonderful. That is
exceptional.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's see. But I want to go backwards if I can. Did you work at all when you were 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old? Was there something, when I say work, it could be manual labor, whatever. I mean, I'm always intrigued. Somebody will say, I've been working all my life. What does that mean? How far can you go? What did you do? Well, I did the lawns for our street. I want to know where people's work ethic comes from. Is it what we see our parents do?
I think often it is, don't you?
I did mow lawns, and I mowed my grandmother's lawn and some of her neighbors that she talked into me doing their lawns, and so that was my main job. But I worked in grocery stores for many years, and when I started teaching, we didn't feel really that we had enough money to get along too well. So my stepfather went out to a grocery store, an A&P in Laconia, and he said, my son would like a job in this store. And sure enough, they called me up, and one year I was in the produce department. One summer I was in the meat department. I didn't last very long there. They changed me. One time I was in the frozen food department, and I ran the deli, and that was in that store. And then when we moved to Connecticut, I didn't do anything in the summer, but when we moved back to New Hampshire, I started working in the stores again, the grocery stores. And while I was teaching in Plymouth, I was working in the summer in the grocery stores.
And getting your master's.
Store said, if you quit your teaching job, I was working on the deli then, I'll give you a full-time job, and I can pay you more than you're getting teaching, which I don't think could happen, but he said that anyway. And so I didn't take him up on it, but I did make quite a bit of money, and my uncle in Laconia had a typewriter shop, and he came to Plymouth and a lot of other schools every summer. I remember coming here because I worked for him several summers, and he cleaned the typewriters. He'd take all the typewriters out of the school and take them to his shop, and I would help him. And we'd clean the typewriters, put them in oil and stuff like that, and bring them back. And so those were my two main jobs. The grocery store, I probably did that 4 or 5 years, and working for my uncle, I maybe did 3 years.
Wow. Wow.
Well, where we owned a family grocery store, I often would put cans on the shelf and things like that. And I also, with my dog, we called one dog Penny because she loved penny candy. And it was a glass candy case. And she would go in and take a Tootsie Roll. And I always took a few things myself to pay myself. But I worked at Weeks' Dairy Bar as a waitress.
Wow.
In my high school years, and also as a telephone operator. I had a friend whose father was an executive. She got all our friends jobs. It was a good experience. I enjoyed it.
I remember we just drove by within the last month or so, Weeks Dairy Bar.
Oh.
And we made a comment because it's still there physically, but it's not open.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And it was
I
a
know, that's
disappointment.
sad.
It was a special, we didn't go there a lot because we're young kids and it's far away. But the times that we went there was very special.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. That's a good connection. Good connection. I have a series of questions, and you can let them alone. Just pass them on by. And I expect them to be quite short. Yeah, I think so. Living in town, when you came here, if you think back, you've already talked about how receptive people were to you when you came here. Maybe that's it. But what do you remember from those early days?
I remember loving it. Even though I didn't want to move to Plymouth, after I got here, I just loved it.
Your faculty was friendly. You had
Everybody
house
was
parties.
friendly. Dr. Barrett was still alive, and she was teaching, and we actually ended up buying her
You told
house.
that. Huh?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess I mentioned that before.
Because you loved it.
Yes, we did.
I thought that was fun.
And we had a lot of friends. For some reason on the faculty at the college, we got acquainted with quite a few people.
Well, Dave Kent used to have those road races, and he didn't like the town at the time. That was fun to go to.
Yeah.
Great.
So,
And I had a lot of the kids whose parents taught at the college, and it seemed that some of them got to know me. They'd come in and ask questions, how their kid was doing and all that sort of thing. And so they started inviting us to college parties. Do you remember that?
just a few.
In
yes.
homes,
yeah.
they were taking turns.
The Furlings.
And we actually got invited to maybe 5 or 6 of those, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. The next to have memories about what has happened with the many changes over the decades in reference to weather. So I'm going to ask you one, can you remember anything during the past 55 years here? What kind of wonderful or horrendous weather we have had that affected you, that just comes, and we can pass anything by. You can leave it alone if you want to. But what would be something that you recall?
I remember how big the snowbanks were when we were younger, and it was so fun. I'm making memory books at home for each member of the family, and to see those pictures of the kids on top of the snow mountain.
And how about the skiing?
Yeah, it was great.
We loved it.
It was
And
wonderful.
for instance, this weather in May, I remember rainy Mays before, but it's extremely cold, I think.
Very good. I agree with you today.
And
I do. It's chilly.
you wonder, will it warm up? But I've heard it's supposed to be a hot, dry summer, so.
Well, we'll take the rain if we can get it.
Yeah,
or any
usually
moisture.
better.
That's one. Yeah.
And we like to climb mountains. We climbed 4,000 footers or something.
Yeah, we did. With,
That's
That was
wonderful.
kind of fun.
yeah.
And you've got to
with
have
our
good weather
friends.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really do, to be safe. Can you recall a fire?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Tell about it.
Well, it was, we just think of Plymouth being nestled in these mountains, especially after climbing, and it's such a peaceful feeling. You get so protected by the mountains. And on this, it was the first day of school. I think it was September 6, 1983. We woke up, the sky was gray. We heard these horns blowing, and we found out that the Plymouth Congregational Church was on fire.
83, 84, one of them, you're right.
Yes.
It was my church. I'll
And-
never forget it.
And it was so scary, and you didn't think the smoke would ever go away. All day the main street was closed. Do you remember that, Paul?
Wow.
I don't remember if we went to school, but I know the main street was shut off all the day. So.
Wow.
And then it took a year and a half, I think, to get the steeple back up on the church. They had a tree company truck bring it in and put it up.
Did it fall off? Because it could be repaired, the little it had wrong with it.
I think they replaced it, Louise, but they did something. They tried to save it and couldn't, but they saved the bell, I believe.
go.
I could
There we
not
go.
be right, but one of Paul Revere's apprentices had built it,
What we heard.
whose name I have forgotten, but it begins with B.
Oh,
Let's see, ba ba ba.
Mrs. Floyd, you're good.
But I think I might be wrong. But it was really interesting to see the steeple come back. It was pre-made, and we missed the old church. It was absolutely stunning. It was like no other church, but we're happy that it's still there. And when the Plymouth Historic District was made, that Rachel and Julie Rand worked so hard on, Rachel Keniston, they allowed, I have more information on this, but they included the church is one of the 5 historic places to be preserved because the ground, it had always been a sacred church, and so we were able to make the new church considered a historic church, which was nice.
I believe it was one of the 3 first buildings built around the common.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's one. I think the common was another itself. That was a great story. And maybe a shop on the main street. I can't do that.
Yeah, Wolfson's Jewelers, why can't I say that, was a bank building, and
right.
the town hall and the post office, which was, so and that happened. The Historical Society and the young ladies together worked on getting this 4-day exhibit together. It was quite an event, and it really was an event that made people realize we needed a place for historical objects, kind of set the groundwork for the Courthouse Museum. So
I was working yesterday, and I said to someone, I was saying thank you, spending a few hours with me, and I said, this is a very recent Historical Society building. Look at the date that we have on it.
I know.
Yeah.
We're
That's
lucky we
nice.
have that.
Yes, absolutely. Is there a family or friend event that you can remember that comes to mind? Again, you can pass on anything that was really special during your lifetime.
well, I might take this question too, but what was really special to us is we moved into just the right neighborhood for us, because my parents, the history of my family was very important and celebrated. You know, Norwegian people came to visit. We had all the traditions at Christmas, and so to move into a neighborhood with Rachel and Miriam Keniston, and their family was so significantly important in all that happened in Plymouth. And she valued their history. Their house is like a museum. And so often when I would miss my family, I'd walk up there. Miriam wrote poetry, and she'd have me look out the window at the bird in the tree, and she might read me a poem. And Rachel was always full of stories of history, of things that had happened as when she was a child here. So I just felt at home. And Rachel, after her family died off, her sister Miriam was no longer with her, spent Thanksgivings with us. So, and she taught me, I really would like, I have a special message today about, I'd like to really salute some chain of events that happened that Rachel made me very, very aware of, and then talk about the Young Ladies Library Association.
Can you tell that she's a teacher here?
Yeah.
Everything is listed. I'm sure it'll be out.
Oh, maybe I should. I'm
kidding.
I wonder first. So anyway, we had a great neighborhood, and Audrey O'Neill lived across the street. She was a psychologist and worked out of town, and we once went on an antiquing trip. But you know, she was a friend, but she was extremely intelligent. And as a kindergarten teachers are intelligent too, but I felt she was interested in matters above my expertise. But we became dear friends, and she really appreciated Plymouth. She wrote a book about it. I want to share just a little passage. But at the time we moved to Plymouth, the college had no room on campus for students. And the established family neighborhoods were really feeling threatened by new apartment buildings filled with college students. So one day I was looking out the window, and I looked across the street beside the O'Neill's house, and there was someone surveying the land. And so I right away, when the O'Neills got home from work, I called and I said, I saw this very disturbing scene today. There were surveyors all over that back lot of the McMinimans. I think they planned to build something. And Bob was on many committees in town, and he said that they'd look into it and get back to me. So then they had a neighborhood meeting. They had found out that a city slicker, as Audrey called them, was planning to build. I thought it was an out-of-town group, but I was rereading her words in her book today. And, had planned to build an apartment house there and buy the old farmhouse, but Bob and Audrey hired a lawyer, and they decided not to do that. So they had a neighborhood meeting to tell us all about it, and then a few days later, she walked up the hill to my house, and she said to me, Judy, you did a favor for the neighborhood. Now I'd like to do a favor for you. And I was only 29 at the time, and I thought, goodness, I've only always said thank you. You know, I haven't said, oh, let me do something for you. So I took a minute to think about everything that was important to me, and why, when we moved here, Plymouth, Rachel just taught me such interesting things about Plymouth history. I was so glad we were here, and my parents were so interested in the history of their family. Paul's family was from the South, and we learned all of their traditions, and I just thought about Guilford had a historical society and had one since the 40s. I guess it was the gift of a building. I don't know how they got so lucky. So I said to her, how about starting a historical society? So she said, I will do that. And Audrey was she was such an intelligent woman, and she got things done. She was trotting around to the fire department or the police department. She wanted it to be a place for all people, and especially the middle class, not the, people that were very rich. And so she wanted all the everyone to be there. But then we realized that we couldn't really accomplish this because we were not from Plymouth. And we needed someone who had the respect of all the old people in town, all the established families. So we went up to our dear friend Rachel's house, and she was delighted with the idea. She got on the phone, we organized and planned the first meeting, and Rachel got everyone so excited about it that we had many people show up. We organized in 1973, and it's still going. We just celebrated our 50th year. We're so proud. And we're really proud, too, that Plymouth has this courthouse in town.
Oh.
And there's a history of that I might want to tell you. There's a group that Rachel made me aware of. She was a member. Ring a bell if I talk too long. But it was the Young Ladies Library Association. It's been in business since 1873. It was a group of young teenagers who were inspired by a teacher, and she inspired them to get books in all people's homes in Plymouth. Mm-hmm. And so they were teenagers, and they decided they were going to accomplish this. And they would have lectures and teas and little plays, and people would give money. Mm. And even though it was the 1873, people listened to these young women. And just about that same time, the courthouse, which was built before we were even a country, Plymouth was one of the squire towns. I think it was it Hanover? I don't know. It was the town north of here and our town, or it could have been Lebanon, but I think it was, I don't know. And because of our population. And so David Webster, one of the proprietors of the town, built a courthouse on his property, and then we got a bigger courthouse. This is really summarizing history. And our little courthouse turned into a wheelwright shop. It was a school. Mm-hmm. And then it just got abandoned in a field in land kind of across from our CVS store. Our Rite Aid store in Plymouth. Right. And so Senator Henry Blair happened to notice that building one day. And so he stopped his car, and he could not let a building that was built to establish the rule of law in our new territory just be abandoned with the door falling off. And so he got determined to move it to its kind of present location, and he fixed it up with $1,000. He restored it to what it had been, and then he looked. That was in 1873, and when the Young Ladies formed. It's funny how history happens in chains of events. But in 1876 is when Henry Blair saw this building, this courthouse, and decided to save it. And so as he finished it up, he wanted the building to have a noble purpose. And he was very interested in history and collecting things, and he was very interested in helping the ladies of the town have a place to relax. And so he gave the building to the young ladies in a very dignified will that said people of proper behavior could go and take respite from the world and enjoy science and things that might be there. So as he couldn't think of what to do with the building, he remembered these ladies. And so he decided in 1878 to offer the building, to offer the deed of the building to the Young Ladies Association. They ran it as our town library for 112 years, and I really credit them with our still having that building because it was used and operated. And they were feeling very cramped, and so wasn't after. It was a library for 112 years, and then so these chains of these happenings worked out well for the town of Plymouth, and the young ladies were very proud of having that building, and we're so happy to have a library at last. And then in 1973, this was popping ahead in time, we formed the Plymouth Historical Society. We, as I've said before, we had 50 years there. So both buildings were getting very crowded. The library was really crowded, and I guess I'm thinking ahead of myself because they happened to realize that they needed to build another library. So about in 1981, Charlotte Pease died, or 82, and she was such a woman in our town's history. They had a tremendous amount of money accumulated, and they had a property right in the center of our town that was a beautiful home. I still remember it. And she gave money to the Young Ladies Society. And Betty Batchelder and Julie Rand took that money in the 1980s and they invested it in the Boone market, and it was growing and growing. And then in 1986, there was the National Register of Historic Places accepted. Meantime, Julie Rand and Rachel were working on the documents to make us a historic district, to secure those 5 buildings so that they would be protected for history. And so we had been accepted by this group, and they decided to have a historic district celebration. It was a 4-day celebration. The Young Ladies and the Historical Society. At that time, all the young ladies were Historical Society members, and very happy to see the building. Actually, we didn't have the building yet, so they were just happy to help. And we found that people loved seeing all the historic objects that had been given to the Young Ladies Association, and they found a great need for us to have a museum. So the library was getting cramped at the courthouse. There was great excitement growing about a museum for the Historical Society. And the young ladies used the money to great advantage. And what they did is they planned a new brick building, our first library, and gave it to the town. And it was because of the money they invested wisely from Charlotte Pease, and it just had grown. So we handed the keys over. But now the young ladies had an empty courthouse. But they knew, because of Henry Blair's deed, that the best use for that building would be to have it as a historical museum. And in 1991, when they moved to the new library building, they all agreed that the Historical Society would now have the use of that courthouse for a museum. It worked out so well for why Henry Blair gave the money to the young ladies, and I think it's because of their interest that we still have this courthouse, and we still have support from the young ladies for the maintenance of the courthouse, and we have added a lot to Plymouth.
There's people that will still drop in on a Saturday and they'll say, I remember when this was my library.
Yes, I know. So it comes with good memories.
It really does. And people say, well, why is that? Well, just look up and see how close the library is and was to the elementary school, the middle school. Well, it wasn't a middle school, junior high, and high school way back when.
Yeah.
So you and I could just hop and skip after school, go to the library to get help on something. Yeah, that happens a great deal. All right.
So it was just nice that these events again happened in a chain, and it's always from a need of a community. And we had a committee, a town full of townspeople that looked to the future and how can we make this
Well,
better?
they had a vision. Thank
Yes.
goodness for the people within your community. When they love it like you do, you think about what more can we do to serve our community members. That's neat. That's
And
really
both
neat.
groups are still, I think the Young Ladies is the oldest a continuous women's group, although we do accept men, and they need new members to support them. And the Historical Society has such interesting programs. Louise was a president for many years, weren't you?
I don't know.
And I mean, the building is full of people enjoying our programs.
There's a lot of history in such a small space.
Oh my gosh.
You could go in there and you could talk for a great deal of time if somebody walked through the door. We have to be very careful not to talk too long.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. It's a great piece of history. It is. Maybe we should do things like that here as well, is take the opportunity that we have because of the Pemmy Baker TV folks and share some history. That would be fun. Are you willing? Yes, they are willing. So that is good. That is good.
It's just that you want these organizations to keep on
Yes, absolutely.
in our town.
I think you've mentioned a few people already, but if I said to you, and we'll start with Paul this time, over the years here, has someone affected you? Did you know somebody well enough and they did something, they said something, but they affected you?
Yeah, I think Mady Barrett was the most. I was most affected by her. And the recommendations she wrote for me that I never read. I just showed it to people, and every time I got the job. And that was really nice. And I like the college, and I like going down to Fausti's. Did we mention that before?
We didn't. We used to love their coconut cream pie. It was a family recipe.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to be given it, but we never did get it.
I bet I know them, and we interviewed the boys.
You did?
Yeah, we had two brothers and a cousin, I think, that came up and did it. And they said, we don't want to be asked any questions about the pies. I think it was a highlight. I think it was a highlight.
Oh, they were so good.
Oh, that's great. The Fausti's is one of them. It really is. Think about the main street
Yes.
and what was there then and may not be now.
Well, we liked Rand's Hardware, and especially Fletcher's grocery store.
Adams.
Adams.
Thank you.
And they would even take the groceries out to the car and
know.
stuff like that.
Mr. Adams did it.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
he did.
Mr. Adams,
Yeah.
Fletcher's
Used to
father.
carry
Yeah.
children.
Yeah, that was great.
And
Oh, the movie theater.
The movie theater, yes.
We're so glad that's been brought back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Newberry's.
Newberry's, that's right.
Yes.
Oh, Anderson's Bakery.
Anderson's Bakery.
Oh, now you're making
How
me.
could I forget?
The Olympia bread. And our daughters love the jelly donuts.
Yeah.
Oh.
And used to get that Norwegian bread.
Yeah, Olympia. Yeah, it was
I don't
good.
think you knew this, but when I interviewed them, Dot and her husband, Tom, she said at the interview they still had the recipe book that she used for all her, oh, I know, don't knock on her door. But I said, you kept it all these years, because it was just a few months shy of 50 years.
That's a
it was
historic
that.
treasure.
Oh, it would be, wouldn't
Wouldn't it be nice for the Historical Society?
Never thought of that. But for them to keep it that long meant it was a special place for them.
How long were they here, Louise?
Just a couple of months shy, 50 years.
Oh.
And amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. Yes, on the
I
main street.
believe Mrs. Anderson had a allergy to flour after a while.
Mr.
Mr. did.
Yeah,
Oh.
Mr. did. Isn't that something? He started it, and then he was allergic to flour, so he had to stay out. Yeah, they shared that as well, too. That was, yeah, that's a good memory. You could do that for many stores that have come and gone. There aren't many that have stayed the test of time. But Newberry's, you think of the hundreds of people that went in there per
counter.
day.
That's why we're
Yes.
so glad we have that
And
counter at
Clay's, too, we
JJ's.
like that.
Yes.
You could get
And the
anything.
Open Gate Restaurant, do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Where
We
was
love
that
that.
located?
On Highland Street.
Left-hand side.
Yeah, is it McLean's building? I don't
might
know
be.
how you
It
do
might
call
be.
it. But it had a fire going, and it had the warmest atmosphere and delicious food. Was it the Blakes that ran that restaurant? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. Blake's was really there as long as I can remember on the main street.
Oh,
They
so
were one of the
wasn't.
early ones that went
Yeah.
on the main street.
Huh.
That would be fun. Now you're saying, can
Oh.
we bring you back? Can we bring you
Yeah.
back for a little time?
I think that was nice too, the family stores.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah.
But we liked Town and Campus too. I guess it became the book exchange, but we really miss having a bookstore.
And we liked, when we were in college, Skiv Eyes at the traffic circle.
Skiv Eyes?
There was a
Does Phil
little,
know about this?
yeah.
I know.
Oh,
Go
well,
ahead.
it was a little diner, and we used to go there for hamburgers when I was in college.
I'm gonna go home and ask
It
him.
was so good. It was just a little thing, and
Was it by the Holderness Bridge?
yeah, and the college kids gave it that name, Skiv Eyes, but I don't know. He had a wife, and I think he was in the Korean War or something because his wife was Asian, and if I got that right, with Asian and Korea.
We're gonna check up on you,
I
Paul.
could be wrong. But anyway, that was fun. We used to go there. The college students did.
Oh, I see something in front of me. Is this an artifact that you would like to share with the group today before we say goodbye?
Oh, yes, quickly about Philip Reitman, Paul? Will you do that?
Okay.
Oh, please.
Well, we were driving in, it wasn't Nova Scotia, was it? Did I get that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay. We went on a trip and we were driving back from Nova Scotia, and there was this accident where this truck was across the road and nobody could get past. And I looked at this person who was parked next to me. We were waiting for them to move the truck. And I said, "Do those tattoos mean what I think they mean?" He said, "Yes, this is Philip Reitman." And he made history because he was, I said, "What do those mean what I think they mean?" And he said, "Yes, I was in Auschwitz and 4 other
They were numbers, right, Paul?
concentration
They were numbers.
camps," but I had noticed the numbers on his arm, which made me ask him. I said, "Would you come to Plymouth Regional High School to give a program on that?" And he said, "I haven't talked about that for 45 years. But he said, you know what?" And he said, "I've never talked about it outside of Canada." And he said, "Yes, I will."
Wow.
And so I asked the principal, and he said, "I don't know if that would be good for high school students." And I found out later on that he was famous. He helped them make the movie Schindler's List. And he was very famous in Canada because he started telling about what it was like. And so the principal just left.
Oh, Carly, why did you ask today?
Well, you know who I mean. Anyway, I asked him if he could come, and he said, "Oh, I don't know about that." And so I said, "Well, could you call him and discuss it?" And he found out that Philip Reitman, when he came back to the United States,
Bruce Parsons.
it was Bruce Parsons.
There he
that's
was. You
right.
could show the picture,
And
Paul.
there they are talking. They became great friends.
He came back many times.
And when he talked with him, he just liked him so much. And they both had lived in Newfoundland, or they came from there because when Philip came back from Europe, because all his relatives were killed, but he found out he had a relative in Newfoundland, and he belonged to a very famous family. Is it Kay's Jewelers or something like that?
Yes, I
They
believe
own
so.
jewelry stores all over the country.
But no country would take him
Yeah.
after the war, only his aunt and uncle in Newfoundland. So.
Wow. So if you can't read it, Reitman recalls Holocaust at PRHS.
Tell about the effect of the kids.
Well, the effect of the kids was unbelievable. Philip liked him, and when he came to speak, parents started coming because he came 4 or 5 times, different years. He even spoke at the private school over there.
Holderness.
And he was such a speaker, and he had this wonderful wife,
You could hear a
Dorothy.
pin drop in the
You
classroom.
could hear a pin drop.
I mean, it was all the classes were
First
there.
of all, they said I said something about, could you have it in the history classes, because I heard that he's very popular and there's going to be a big crowd. And he called Philip, and Philip said, I won't speak unless there are at least 100 people. He said, this story has to get out. And
It got him so emotional, he would cry sometimes.
Wow. Well, I can understand why.
And he made us cry. He made everybody cry.
But
And
So did they host it
we
in the
got
auditorium?
thank you
yes, they
letters
did.
Okay.
About that.
about that.
And the kids writing and stuff.
And the kids wrote letters, and
Wow.
whenever they heard he was coming to town, it was a big deal. Parents started coming.
I can see that. Do you mind if I just read a sentence or two?
Yes, that would be
All right,
great.
this is to Paul and Judy, it's the second paragraph. He has given us a priceless gift. You also, as a caring teacher, citizens of Plymouth, you bring immense value to our children and community.
Aw.
How important is
Truly.
teaching, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's,
Teaching
wow,
is
wow.
the way
This is something that you keep.
to. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Wow.
these people, it was the, you know who it was, the people that greeted him and everything.
The teachers?
No, the people in town. And, Well, anyway, it was just amazing. So they took him to Concord,
Yeah.
and he gave a program there, and they made him a New Hampshire citizen, a legal citizen of New Hampshire.
But what he taught the kids to, what was his message?
His message was, you can't have hate, and we love everybody. And when
He loved Americans.
he loved Americans.
Oh, man.
And when he was standing in line and they were lining up for the gas chambers and whatnot, the person in front of him said he was only 14, and his whole family was lost. They were taken to the funerals and the showers where they had the something that would kill them when the shower turned
Chemical
on,
shower.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the person that was standing near him, he said, he was only 14, he said, tell him that you have a trade, that you know how to do something, and maybe you won't have to go to the
Showers.
showers.
Oh my.
And
Oh my.
so and some of them had to go to furnaces too. And so when he got there, they said, tell us your background. He said, well, I'm a carpenter. He had never held a hammer. But the guy and told him to say something like that. He said, okay, you can go to the left. You're saved. We need carpenters.
Interesting
And
comment.
so he was
know.
able to, and one of his jobs they gave him was to carry bodies, drag bodies down to a hole where they dropped them and buried them.
But he kept alive by, he became a farmer a lot, and he kept alive by eating the horse's oats.
Yeah.
And he was so skinny when the Americans came to did he say he weighed 80 pounds or
Something
60
like that,
pounds
yeah.
or?
I cannot believe the people that must heard these stories over time, the children and how it could have affected them, etc. It's traumatic. It's absolutely traumatic. Well, I'm looking at the clock, and I'm thinking, we are done.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say quickly
I
to
think
the audience?
that's great.
Well, I did not give my the one thing I always taught my kindergartners is the golden rule: treat others as you love to be treated. I don't know if we have time, Louise, but I want to give this book to the Historical Society. It's a book Audrey wrote. And this page defines the Audrey I knew, but in the book she talks about how she said a neighbor asked me to help her organize. So she didn't name me, but it's the only copy of this book, and it's out of copy. I would like the Historical Society to have it. But this is what she said, because she was a scientist, and she wasn't always the warmest person, but changes. She says, New Hampshire has been good to us. We fit in with their values. We have old clothes, an old car, an old house, and we are willing to get our hands dirty. Had always felt different. Here, everyone is different. We had always been outsiders. Here we were pressed into community service we would never have been considered for elsewhere. Our children were part of their school as they never could have been in a larger, more impersonal system. Yankees are interested in doing, not being. I could always do things. It was what I am that was on trial before. Here they accepted me as I am, as they accept themselves, and I found out who I am reflected in their eyes. That's beautiful.
What a
And that's
wonderful
Plymouth,
way.
New Hampshire.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's a wonderful way to sum it up for our presentation today. Ladies, gentlemen, two
Thank
of
you, Louise,
Oh,
and
no, no, no,
applause
no.
for
Oh,
job
we do
well
this.
done.
No, no, no,
It's a
that
lot
was
of
fun.
work.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We went over a couple of minutes, so they might yell at us, and we don't care. How about that?
We had fun.
It was
Thank
fun.
you.